Hi Papercrafters! Welcome to another Design with Jo video. I'm Joanne Rogers, a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Central Alberta, Canada, and I've been designing with you in mind since 1999. The stitched lace dies are new in the 2019-20 annual catalog, and when it first came out, I knew that I needed to get this die. It is so intricate and pretty that I knew that I would want to decorate all kinds of different designs. So I featured it on my blog as well this week so that you can see some different ideas made with this die. So when you have this die, I think there's some tools that you have to have. And one is a die brush. And this is the old die brush. And I keep my foam in a little box, which is a box for golf balls. And it fits perfectly. And you also need to have a pokey tool of some kind. So again, this is retired as well. This is our paper piercing tool. If you have the take your pick tool with a pointy end, that will work just as well. And you of course need to have your die cutter. So I'm just going to pull in my die cutter right now. I found the sandwich that works the best in terms of not needing to run the die through as many times is my precision base plate. And I often don't use my precision base plate because I find that it does warp my standard cutting mats. So, but in this case, I found that it does take away a little bit of that extra time. So I've got my thin die adapter, I have my big shot platform, and I have my precision base plate. And I put those into my big shot or my die cutter, and I'm going to use this die upside down. And I cut a piece of paper that is the same size as the die. You go a little bit larger, but it's the same size basically as the die, and I lay it right over top. So the size of this is 4 3/8 by 5 7/8. And then I lay it so that the cutting surface is up. And I put it on just a little bit of an angle. If you find you need to put a piece of washi tape on to hold it, you can. I usually don't. And then I just put my standard plate over top and I run it through. Then I'll run it through the other way as well. At this point, I take it out and I take a look at it. And I look at whether it appears that I've cut through all of the dies. And there are a lot of little dots in there. In this case, because I'm using a regular Whisper White, it went through probably and cut a little bit easier than if you would use a standard piece of cardstock. And I will show you those in just a minute. So I'm done with my big shot at this point, and I'm going to pull in my die brush, and I find that I keep my paper in the die, and I found that it works easier for me. So I lay it down, and then I use a fair bit of pressure to actually run my die brush right over top. And I'm going to do this a little bit so that I can see that the little pieces are punching out into the foam. So I'll run this. Now this does take a little bit of time, I will admit that, but you're left with such wonderful results that it's worth it for me. So once I've done that, then I turn it over. You can see all the pieces that have come out. I still have quite a few pieces that are still in there. So now I'm going to do it from this side as well. And I'm going to try and get a few more out of there. And then that's all I'm going to use the die brush for. So I can go in and I can poke out some of these right now if I want. And so that works. However, I found that it's easier for me and a little more efficient. So what I do is if you have a little bit like this, you can just lift that off. Extending over the side, I mean. If you don't have any, if you've used a smaller piece, take your pick tool or your paper piercer and just go underneath and lift up the edge and then just peel it off. And what I have found with this is that it seems to really, I know it doesn't make sense, but it seems to really have strengthened up the paper running it through the big shot. And that may seem strange, but it seems that that's what happens. So now what I do is I'll just do a little bit of poking manually. What I found that works well is in where you have these 5 that are all together, I just take my pokey tool and I run it over top, and usually they will mostly come out. If I have some stragglers, I just go back in, and I'm running my fingers along the bottom as well, my fingernail, just to try and push those out a little bit. So again, this will take me a little bit of time, but I spend, oh, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or whatever, making a bunch of different colors, and then I have them available. And you can use all kinds of different designs once you have these. So I'm not gonna poke all of those out, but you get the idea. This is just a quicker way for me, just by running it along there rather than poking each one individually. And sometimes you do need to poke individually. Now the really cool part to the die is that it has an outline piece as well. And now the outline piece is going to cut around the edges of your die, and you would need to run it once and then you'd pick it up and run it twice so that you can get a strip. Now, because I'm using, this is a little bit not nearly as detailed as this die itself, I'm going to use my Big Shot platform with 2 cutting mat pads for this. I'm not going to use my precision base plate. So I can lay this down here. Let's just try it right on the edge. So if you go right to the edge, so that was as far as the die went. I found that I line it up with these little pokey areas, these little pointy areas here, and I can see around those. I take a piece of washi tape and I'm just going to lay that in place so that it doesn't move. And I think I'm going to put another one right there. Take one of our new Stampin' Up! Washi tapes. And now I'm going to run that through. And what happens is when that comes apart, take my washi tape off, it comes apart, and I just need to clip this in because it was just a little bit longer than the die. What you get is a really nice edge. Now here, you can see that I didn't get it really close enough, so it moved a little bit. But you get a lovely scalloped edge right around there. So you can do that if you have a larger piece of cardstock, which is why I'm recommending a larger one rather than a smaller one. And now you're going to go around to the other side and you're going to repeat that, but I want to show you what happens to the rest of the die when you do that. So I'm going to get this lined up here with the points again. I'm going to try and not get my head in the shot there for you. And I'm going to put a piece on this end as well. Now what I want to do is I didn't last time, I wasn't paying close enough attention, but you want this to be as much on a diagonal because this is a fairly thin die. And when you run it through straight like this, it gets more pressure running through the Big Shot on one end as opposed to the other. And you could end up warping your die a little bit. So as much as possible, if you can put it on a diagonal, it just protects it a little bit over the long term. So I'm just going to put my second pad on top and run that through just once. And this time when I pull it out, I've created a strip that is also just tiny attached here. I'll just give it a snip. I've created a strip that is that long, which is really very pretty. But I want to show you this piece here. So hold on just one second. And take that one off. So what you have left over is not a really beautiful piece here, and you cannot any longer get your strip on there to cut that off. So it's just a little, not enough paper there. So even if I were to put that one down, the cutting surface is going beyond the edge of the paper. So you are not going to get a nice edge like you have on this one. So just something to keep in mind. You have to go down to the next one and do it that way. So you can use this strip though, and I've used them in different ways on my cards, and I'm going to show you one way that I use it just after I give you these tips. So don't throw them away because they're still going to be worthwhile to you. Just know that you're not going to get 5 different ones out of here. So the max I think you're going to get is 2 full ones. I don't think you're going to get 3, but it's still pretty good and you can do a lot with these guys. Let me just show you a couple other pieces once they've been cut out. So this is Poppy Parade. And as I said, it seems to really give a smooth finish to your paper. This seems smoother than just the paper cardstock by itself. And when you put that on something dark is when you really see the details in behind it. So that's Poppy Parade. Then I have another one that is Seaside Spray. And I can see that I've got, when you put it on something is when you can see these little pieces that might still be left over. So there's another Seaside Spray. I also tried it on vellum, and for the most part it worked, but I see that I really didn't get down here, and it was harder to see through the vellum whether it had cut or not, and I made an assumption that it had cut before I peeled it away. So there's another tip for you. While it's still on your die and you've run it through and used your die brush, after you've run it through, pull it, turn it over and see if you've got most of the pieces out. And if you don't, you can still run it through the Big Shot or your die cutter again, because it hasn't moved. It's stuck on this die quite well until you peel it away. So that's one of the other reasons why I really like to keep it on the die and try and get those pieces out. So now let me show you just a couple different designs I made with it. So this was one of the first things that I think that I made, and I shared this on my blog. And my blog is www.designwithjo.ca. And this one here shows how I put it into the Delightful Tag Topper Punch. And then this is one of those strips. So with the strip, what you can also do is, if you don't like this edge here, you can cut around your design. So I just cut around, and I actually cut it as much as I could on sort of a smooth circle, shall we say. That maybe is just a tiny bit too close. I'm going to do the same thing on this end here. I'll try to be a little further away. Just try and, don't drink a lot of caffeine that morning, because you want to try and have a nice smooth edge. And then this one here only has 4, but you can lay it on and you've got a decorative element like that. I've also just used 1 in a couple different places. So not on this design, but in others, just 1. On this guy here, I cut the bottom. So on the bottom edge here, I cut around the edge. So I just cut along the bottom. Let me show you that. So on this piece right here, let's say I want to go here. So I'm cutting around the stitching line just to finish it off. So just to make it look like I had intended it to be like that, just so it gave it a nice bottom. So you can go wherever you want and cut around whatever you want, but I just thought that this was a way that I got a little bit more use out of my die, rather than throwing it away and only using up to here. So you can create another edge here just by using your paper snips. So this one here, I have some of my design tips also on my blog, so you can take a read through there. In today's blog post, this is the one that I'm featuring, and all I've done here is cut it straight. So you don't need to use the die to cut it into the lace pattern. You can cut it straight, and then you can also just cut and have a piece on the inside that will just finish off your card. So don't feel that you need to do it here. So here we've got a tag, here we've got it cut with the die and cut with scissors. Here we have it just cut with your trimmer. And then I want to do a project right now really quickly to show you another option. Last week I featured to a Wild Rose bundle on my blog, and so I'm still playing with it this week. So I've taken the just the detailed outline rose and stamped it with Versamark and heated it with white embossing powder, and I've done that as well with 2 of the leaves. On this guy here, I have just created a rectangle shape, and I've just glued a piece of Daffodil Delight stitched lace right in behind. So I've created a little bit of a screen look, and I'm just going to put that down here on the front of a reverse fold card. One of my favorite quick cards. And then this is a panel that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So 4 1/4 this way, 5 1/2. And that was the size of the paper that I put in, and I lined it up along the edge. So you can see here that this is the edge. And then I'm just going to glue that down. And what I found for gluing that works best for me, rather than pulling out my sponge, you could do that. I'm just going to put dots of glue all over the background. And I'm just going to lay that right in here with a border around it. And probably as soon as I get it put down, I will notice that there's a piece that is missing. So I have my piece there, and I'm going to lay down this piece as well. So this one's a little easier to glue because you have a spot that you're not going to see the glue. So all the way around the outside edge, and I'm just going to lay this down over top and get it centered onto my reverse fold there as much as possible. You might just need to hold that to set it up for a little bit. And I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm just going to take this label comes in the Tua Wild Rose dies, and I've just stamped the hello in here with Memento, and I'm just going to glue that down right over top. And it's going to be on the inside. So I want it to be in behind here. I could put it here. I think I'm just going to put it here because I like the black background in behind, and it's a little bit unexpected. Oh, and I forgot one thing. I do want to glue my leaf right in the background there. So I want to lay that down. Okay, so I'm just going to let those all set up, and while it's setting up, I'm going to color the back of my rose with a little bit of my Daffodil Delight. So I don't want to get it all colored yellow. I want some of the white to be showing. So you can see I'm not doing a lot of thought to that. That was my light Daffodil Delight, and this is my dark Daffodil Delight. So I just want that to be radiating out from the edges a little bit. And when I turn it over, it's going to look a lot lighter than it does right now. But I've just created a little bit of color. And, oh, I did also want to put this in behind here. And I think I still have enough time. No, I don't. So I'm going to put this one this way. And I'm going to put that on also with just a little dab of glue. And have that one come out this way. And then I'm going to put my flowers over top, and I'm going to put those on with a dimensional. And I'm just going to put it right over top here so that it's going to be hidden a little bit by the center. And just put that over top. I think maybe I'm going to put it towards the top. I don't want it necessarily to be centered, but it is. Okay, so there's a really quick card for you. This here was just a scrap. This was also just a scrap. And then one piece of the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So there you go, all done. I hope that you can see that there's lots of different options for using the stitched lace dies. And I'd love it if you give these a try. And I'd like to know how it turned out and any little tweaks that you might make along the way, or any little tips that you found as you've been working with this die. So you can purchase any of the supplies I use for the design by clicking on the links in the description below. And if you live in Canada and don't yet have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to be your gal. You can also find me at www.designwithjo.ca. I post regularly, and it would be great to have you join in. If you're curious about having your own paper crafting business, I've got a growing team of Kreative Kanucks. We're a bunch of wonderful crafters with fabulous ideas, and we're ready to welcome you. Contact me today. If this project tickled your creativity, please like it below and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel for more great ideas. Thanks very much, and have a great paper crafting day.